very top prestigious schools that are known for entrepreneurship. And I sat in the back of those classrooms, and the ideas that those students were pitching were exactly the same ideas my students were pitching here at Morehouse. No difference. Here's where the difference was. Many times as they pitched their ideas, they had alums in those rooms that says, I'm gonna give you, right in the classroom, my jaw was like, really? I'm gonna give you $100K to go test that idea. So my students here were putting out these ideas, which are exactly the same. I didn't have $100K to give them to go test those ideas. They're graduating and they're telling me, I really want to start this thing, but I got the student loan. My mom and my pops are telling me you better take that job at JP Morgan Chase and whatever, so that whole conflict. So there's a difference here of where we're starting from.
Yeah, it is complex.
Right?
Yep.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to MBA Unplugged, the greatest financial literacy podcast on the planet. In today's episode, Professor Young and I are privileged to have one of Morehouse's college very finest. So our guest has over 20 years of experience in various aspects of business, management from corporate, small business, educational, and nonprofit organizations. She is an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Morehouse College and the founding director of the Morehouse Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, Dr. Tiffany Bussey. Dr. Bussey, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful, even better. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Professor Young, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm good.
So, Dr. Bussey, I want to really fill our listeners in. So for people who are not really familiar with you, can you really tell us a little bit about our background about yourself and what you currently do now?
Sure, yeah. First of all, congratulations to you guys for this podcast. So much of what I hear and what I see here at Morehouse is dreams, right? And until you take action to make those dreams a reality, from students wanting to do podcasts, and now here you are doing it. Big ups to that. So a little bit about myself, without getting into the work. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter. I'm an immigrant to the U.S. I was born in Belize in Central America and grew up there for my formative years, right through high school.
Wow.
I came to the U.S. For undergrad, studied economics at College of St. Elizabeth in New Jersey. And like most economists at that time, I wanted to be on the street, to go to Wall Street. So my first job was at Merrill Lynch, and did some as part of the bonds market, and had quite an experience there, and decided one thing for sure: I did not like it. So that was it. And then had an opportunity to move to Washington, D.C., where I really, really got my feet wet and really fell in love with small business. I worked for the federal sector there with many small firms, and saw people like me starting great companies, selling them, spinning off, and doing some awesome things that I never heard about before. And that really kind of just really made my passion for small business. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And then I had the opportunity to do an MBA at George Washington University. Met my husband at one of those companies, and moved to Atlanta 33 years ago. So like they said, the rest is history.
Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I know I mentioned that you are the founding director of the Morehouse Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center. So for people who really never heard of it before, Can you really tell us what it is and what purpose does it really serve here at Morehouse?
Sure. So I spoke about my background in federal procurement and this bug for really helping small businesses. When I moved to Atlanta in the federal space, very little work was being done in Atlanta at that time. And so I am what you call an accidental entrepreneur. Out of necessity, I couldn't find a job, just had an MBA. I started a consulting firm, and my work at that first consulting firm was around environmental engineering, and that owner happens to be on the board of Morris Brown College.
Wow.
So here I am, didn't go to an HBCU, didn't know much about HBCUs, and that person came back one day to the office while I was doing some consulting work, and he said, we got a contract at Morris Brown, and nobody knows what to do about it. Because typically in the higher ed, we're familiar with grants, but not contracts. And he asked me if I would go to Morris Brown and work a couple days, he would pay my salary around that. Well, that led to a body of work around HBCUs, acquiring contracts and really working as what we call then a third-party entity. We created the Morris Brown Research Institute and really had about maybe 10, 15 million in contracts when Morris Brown fell into its accreditation problems. So really shopping that body of work around the largest collaboration of HBCUs right here in Atlanta, right? I have had the opportunity to work at Spelman for a bit, and then in one meeting, by chance, happened to be talking about those contract works with the faculty of Morehouse in that audience, and they said, hey, this is fantastic. Would you talk to our Dean of Business at that time, John Williams, about this work where faculty could be engaged, students could be engaged in government contracting, and I did. And thanks to Dr. Williams' vision, he said, are you telling me that you can bring this work and all we have to do is provide an office and Morehouse doesn't have to come up with money for you to create a center? And if you know anything about John Williams, he said at that time, let's do it, so that's exactly what happened. I came over from across the street.
That was what's actually going through my mind when I heard that. So I can hear that conversation.
Yes. And thanks to Dean Williams to having that, belief in me to really grow this. So again, this has been my entrepreneurial venture. We grew that work to next year, believe it or not, will be 20 years.
Wow.
So we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary. And I like to say the mission of what we do is to start, scale, and grow Black businesses. At the time, if you could imagine 20 years ago, this whole body of work around entrepreneurship was foreign to higher ed. As a matter of fact, I can remember being in a faculty meeting and the debate was on, can you really teach this? Because you're born and we don't teach this at a liberal arts institution and all those types of stuff. And we've come full circle. We now have a minor in entrepreneurship. It was always the belief that we're not here to just teach you guys to help you go find jobs, but to help you create companies that can create jobs. And that was the impetus of that. We do the work both with developing co-curricular programs to help the students understand what it means to be an entrepreneur. And then we work with businesses outside our gates, what we like to call Morehouse Beyond Borders.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Dr. Bussey, I know you mentioned a lot about the word entrepreneurship. Yeah. And that word has so many different meanings, so many different
vectors off and everywhere.
Right, so many different. So if you could condense it down into what is entrepreneurship to you?
I'll tell you the Tiffany Bussey view of entrepreneurship. And I think it comes back to, if we think about the origination of the word, right? It's a French word that really means to build. To build something. And I like to think that we're all entrepreneurs because it's about providing solutions. And if we think about individuals that see a problem and say, you know what, I think I can fix this or I can provide a solution, then the entrepreneurship part is about how do we create an organization around that? How do we take that idea and build and bring resources to really stand it up and make it happen in providing value to the marketplace? This version of capitalism that we're now experimenting with kind of puts a spin on it that it's about greed and it's only about profit. But I think it's about solving global problems and solving societal problems. That's what entrepreneurship is about. And if we take that view, then we're all entrepreneurial. Whether you're a photographer, whether you're producing something to help folks understand how to better learn, or whether you're providing a product or service for the general marketplace. We're all entrepreneurial because we're solving for something.
Yeah, so I know you just talked about how entrepreneurship can go in so many different routes, but some people consider themselves an entrepreneur, but maybe aren't really, like you said, building something or growing wealth. So I know entrepreneurship lifestyle is your own boss. You don't have to work a 9 to 5, bring your own paycheck, that lavish lifestyle. What are some of the most common misconceptions of
that one? That one. So
all of the above.
It always really kind of really have me think when students walk in and I say, well, why would you want to be an entrepreneur? I want to be my own boss. And we have unfortunately romanticized entrepreneurship. for the media and for everything else that has been done, but it's one of the hardest things you will ever do, right? And when we think about not having our boss, we always are serving someone else, whether it's that customer. If you're doing this right, then your customer is your boss, because you have to be able to satisfy the need of that customer, whoever that customer is. And we always going to have a customer, because remember, again, we're starting from providing solutions. So whoever we're solving something for, or having to ease that pain point for them, then that's the person that's our boss, because we have to figure out and be passionate. When we think about businesses that really succeed, or organization that succeed, you fell in love with the problem. You fell in love with that solution that you're trying to solve for, and therefore that customer, you're in love with that customer. So that customer becomes your boss. You're never without that.
So you said it's just, like you said, entrepreneurship is one of the hardest things you do.
Yep.
I'm curious. So let's say someone's on the track of trying to become an entrepreneur, and they're kind of stuck at this hill. They can't get over this hill. What is that deciding factor that's making entrepreneurship so hard? Is it something internal, like a person has to figure out within their business, or is it maybe choosing the right industry? What is really like that big factor that makes entrepreneurship so challenging?
Finding what they're solving for. If you don't know what you're solving for, you can't make this work. And so many times, and it's a flip side about how we have learned a lot, and we're teaching about entrepreneurship a bit differently. I always start about, what problem are you solving for? If we can answer that, and it's not an easy question to answer, because we fall in love with an idea, and then we go off and we build it and hope that they will come. If we could step back and think about, why am I in love with that idea? What is the value that I'm really bringing? Because at the end of the day, if you're not solving something or making somebody's lives a little easier, then you won't have customers. And that won't succeed. I don't care if it's for a social venture, whatever it is. We have to be able to create value. And if you don't know what that is, and it's not easy to know, for you, it takes time. I can't give you a number. We teach about customer discovery or problem discovery, and we don't take enough time in the front end, because we're so busy setting up that website, creating that LLC, and doing all those other fancy things to say that we're an entrepreneur without truly. But if you fall in love with the problem that you think you're solving and keep searching for it, I think that is really where it starts clicking.
Nail on the hammer. Oh my goodness. The amount of knowledge being dropped. If you learned something, hit the like button right now. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and share this video with one person.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned, that there's this thing about entrepreneurship, it's sexy. It's like, everything works. And 99% of stuff doesn't work.
Nope.
And the big thing that they don't tell you, there's a psychology of entrepreneurship that no one tells you about. Didn't tell me, I didn't realize it, but at the end of the time, it's very lonely.
Yeah.
It's people don't understand, your friends don't understand, your parents don't understand, they want to support you, they don't know how, and you're constantly thinking about your business 24/7.
Yep.
And I used to always say that on Fridays, it would literally take me about 2 days to decompress. And by Sunday, I had to start all over again. So I think the glamorization of entrepreneurship has really gotten out of control to the point where everybody wants to be a startup. Everybody wants to start a company.
Well, look at what we see on the media, right? And everybody's always smiling, and they're rich.
Everybody's raising money all the time. And I'm like, okay, you're raising money for what? Have you really solved the pain, as I call it, a problem? Yep. Have you solved that pain? And it's like, well, yeah, I know people, but you've fallen in love with your concept to the point that you're ignoring everybody and everything, and people are really trying to help you. Yeah. To do minor pivots, not hard pivots, but just little minor pivots to get there. And if you're not coachable, as we said in another podcast, because we talked about franchising, and if you're not coachable, there's nothing you can do. It's just game over at that point.
I want to take off on 2 points that you just said. Number one, that raising money. So I like to view entrepreneurship as there's really kind of 3 pathways with entrepreneurship. There's small businesses, which means that it's that product and that service is there. You have that consumer, that customer in mind, and you have something established and you're working at it. There's startup, which is completely different from a small business.
That's right.
There's the startup perspective. I'm creating something brand new. I'm searching for my business model. I don't know what that is, and it's going to take me a while from a startup to then become a small business to then grow to a large business. Got it? 1, 2. The third one is the entrepreneurship where you're internal. Some of, again, with splice and dice this thing, I like to keep it very simple and call it an intrapreneur. It's all entrepreneurship.
That's right.
It's a third pathway. You're part of an organization. You probably work for an IBM or whomever, large organization, but you're still solving something, and you're being innovative, and you're looking for solution. You're an entrepreneur. So when we look at those 3 different pathways, and they're different innuendos, but at the same time, the framework remains the same, that you have to be passionate about that problem that you're solving, right? And coming up with those solutions. So here at Morehouse, we try to figure out different things to clarify those pathways. So we have different programs for each one of those different things.
That's right.
I would mention too that there is a fourth, which is the social entrepreneurship, and we're about to launch the social entrepreneurship club and fellowship and everything here, which is about really solving and intentionally a problem for society, right? Some of us don't differentiate. That was my mindset before, and again, putting it in all one bucket, because you have to understand and learn the same framework. Who's your customer? What problem am I solving? How do I find a solution to that? And understand a business model. Even if it's not for profit business, you have to understand the business model.
But even under the social entrepreneurship, there's this misconception that you're solving a problem, but you're like a
Not making money.
501c.
Yeah, nope.
I didn't want to say that, but that's what people think.
Nope.
And I think entrepreneurship, in terms of social entrepreneurship, you're solving a societal problem, and that you're helping somebody at the same time you have a company that's thriving.
Yes.
And you can do that.
Yes.
You
should.
You should be doing that all the time. If we're really being honest about it, you should be doing that all the
Even if
time.
I'm giving you a grant, you better be proving to me and the grantors, which is what we do here at the MIEC. We live off grants and contracts. And I still have to have that responsibility to show value to my grantors. So if I totally agree with you.
Yeah, that's like a Warby Parker.
Yes.
You know, originally they started off, buy a pair of glasses. They would help somebody else, someone less fortunate, with a pair of glasses. And now it's a major brand in an industry that was loaded with competitors, but their niche is when you buy something, your dollar is really being invested in the right way, and it's just not a grab and take. So yeah, absolutely.
I know you guys can't really feel it, but the energy Dr. Bussey has with the passion, like the energy, it's just like a force.
We haven't had this in a long time. Well, this was our 4th podcast, so it's been it hasn't been. We got energy.
Shout out, all the guests we've had before, but Dr. Bussey, I'm just so thankful for all your energy and your passion. Now, it leads me to ask you, where did this passion come from? Like, where did you get your passion for teaching and entrepreneurship?
I love seeing things being created. I like to say I'm an artist. And the artist sees that vision before everyone else does, right? And so I believe in us as a community. I believe that we're so creative. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our resilience as a people for so many times, right? So we got to be the most entrepreneurial community. I am hands down, because of the things that we've had to do despite others trying to put us down. So I truly believe in that. I couldn't be at a better place than Morehouse. I often say I have the best job in the world. I get to straddle the fence, work with students and work with businesses in the community. And when we do this in practice, we are touching people that put their lives on the line for their businesses. They got to make payroll. They got to understand to keep those lights on. And so for me, I can't imagine doing anything else. And that's what you're hearing, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome. Now, I want to add on to what you said. You said it's almost like we have to be the most entrepreneur. And it leads me to ask you, what is the problem with entrepreneurship and the lack of entrepreneurship within the Black community specifically? Now, I want to ask you, is it a lack of knowledge? Is it a lack of exposure? What do you think is really causing that lack of representation within the Black community of entrepreneurship?
Number one, I'm going to say, and people don't like this answer, it's complex. There's not one answer to that question. It's a combination of different things that gets layered together. I don't think there's anything wrong with us individually. And when I first started this work here at Morehouse, again, by my dear, and I love him dearly, Dean Williams said to me, go find out what the others are doing and come back and bring the Morehouse way of doing this. As a matter of fact, I was told to go to Georgia Tech, not to name places, and come back and do it the way they're doing it, right?
They ain't gonna touch that one.
Yeah. And what I found...
We might have to edit that piece out.
Yes, sorry about that. I went to other schools, and very top prestigious schools that are known for entrepreneurship, and I sat in the back of those classrooms, and the ideas that those students were pitching were exactly the same ideas my students were pitching here at Morehouse. No difference. Here's where the difference was. Many times as they pitched their ideas, they had alums in those rooms that says, I'm gonna give you, right in the classroom, my jaw was like, really? I'm gonna give you $100K to go test that idea. So my students here were putting out these ideas, which are exactly the same. I didn't have $100K to give them to go test those ideas. They're graduating and they're telling me, I really want to start this thing, but I got the student loan. My mom and my pops are telling me you better take that job at JP Morgan Chase and whatever, so that whole conflict. So there's a difference here of where we're starting from.
Yeah, it is complex.
Right?
Yep.
There's that piece. But if it comes with ideas, we're right there with everyone else. When it comes to resources, we're not. When it comes to opportunities, we're not. When it comes to systemic barriers that are designed to keep us down, we're not. So I think when we start thinking about these things, there's opportunity, yes, for more knowledge, which is what we're doing. We're launching the minor. We're having all these great co-curricular programs. We now have the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, which is raising funds and the emphasis and those types of stuff. But at the end of the day, we cannot ignore some of these systemic things that are still there that we cannot teach away and learn away. And many times curriculums don't address that, because they're like, oh, we gave you all this knowledge, just go put it in there and put the time in and put the hours in. We got to start with acknowledgement that there are systemic barriers, not that it's going to keep us back and not from trying, but acknowledging them and then figuring out a way to work around them and work within them. So for those reasons, we like to think of our programming of really bringing together the resources part, capital, which is the number one thing everyone talked about, and making sure that that's there. But the capital that we often talked about is often only the financial, and then we stop there. But there are other sources of capital.
Social.
There's social capital, and there's human capital, and there's networks, and to one point that you mentioned, the loneliness, you have to form a community. If you bring, and that's the other way that ideas and things get shared. When I first got here, students will tell me, I got an idea, but I don't want to share it because somebody's going to steal it. I'm like, please, well, first of all, I'm not signing one with you because you're coming to me for help. Right. But the other thing is, if we don't put our ideas out there, that's the only way it's going to revolve and iterate. And so we have to change that mindset that we got to be open. We got to form communities, and we have the Launchpad, the Blackstone Launchpad here now on campus, which is a space for students to come in and really talk and engage and figure out. And just like you hang out at the CAF or in the dorms, you should be doing that of entrepreneurs sharing ideas and iterating and building upon it, right? Everybody thinks they have that unique idea. I mentioned about the podcast. Right. There's like 5 other groups here that want to do this. Exact same thing.
That's funny you said that, because I'm an entrepreneur just in my spirit, in my heart. And I know that the MBA said, where were we trying to do a podcast? That's all I needed to hear. I said, oh, okay. So I tabled it in my mind. I saw Charles doing some great things as a freshman. I grabbed him and said, let's do a podcast. I said, it's going to be raggedy for a minute. We'll figure it out as we go. And obviously
that part right there.
And obviously we've had our challenges recently. We've had to figure this stuff as we grow with anything. And I knew that. But for me, it was just like, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done. I don't need to hear about what we can't do. It's got to do this. Let's just get it done. And that's the first thing. So I feel like this is entrepreneurial.
Yes.
In itself right here, that we did this. The podcast 100%. Is brand, and we're trying to brand it. We're trying to do things. We're going to have a website, all that stuff. Here's the second thing that I agree with you on. I went through the Goldman Sachs program, 10,000 Small Business Program. And they had Babson.
Yep.
which is supposed to be the
Number one.
and we're not gonna cut that out, but
Shout out to them.
Shout out Goldman.
and shout out Goldman too. But
Yes.
and I went through that program and I noticed that there was like, okay, you have people of color in this environment, but it was the stuff that we were studying and going through the modules. That's the word I was looking for. The modules that we were going through, except for the finance piece. All the other modules were kind of slanted. It's like, well, I don't really deal with that in my community. Well, I don't deal with that with my my customer base, And so, how do you address that? So they didn't really know how to address it because it's like entrepreneurship. Let's take a broad brush. It's everybody,
one size fits
and it's
all.
not. And
One
it's
size
not
fits
because
all.
I teach my students in my entrepreneurial finance class. I was like, we have to be just a little bit better, know our numbers just a little bit better, so we can prove that our not only the idea is great, but we're on top of it too. And I don't think our counterparts. And this is real conversation here. I don't think our counterparts have that hurdle.
I'm going to agree with you with that, and shout out to one of our other colleagues. So Dr. Keith Hollingsworth have some great research papers out there that really says and talks to that point, right? Which is why I think who else other than Morehouse
That's right.
needs to become the epicenter of Black business research and Black business practice.
It's gotta be us.
And we're starting, and again, to the point, not talk about it, we're doing it.
We're doing it.
So thanks to JP Morgan Chase.
Shout out
to
JP Morgan
Chase.
Chase.
We sure do a lot of shout outs in these podcasts.
Yay.
we need some advertising dollars.
We're doing one of the largest study on Black business right now in how to provide technical assistance to Black businesses, because there is still a debate out there, like we did with entrepreneurship a few years ago, on what's the nuances. A business is a business. Well, one size does not fit all, right?
Right.
To your point that
Yep.
there's the level of trust. There's the level of building community. There's the level of so many different aspects that I believe that as we continue to do this research and to do the practice with both our students and the businesses in the community, Morehouse will become that center where folks look to say, answer that question that you asked about. What are these barriers and how do we eradicate and bring these barriers down so that we are more successful than the 2.4 percentage of all businesses that we represent right now. We're 13% of the U.S. population, but only 2.4%
Wow.
of all businesses are Black. We got to change that number.
And when you said what better place to do it is here, I believe that. I'm a product of Morehouse. So we're on the same page with
Yes.
that. And I said, what better place to talk about entrepreneurship, financial literacy on a podcast, Morehouse College. We
Yes.
need to be the first to do it.
And you are. And we're going to make sure we really see
And that's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why. So I'm excited that, I feel your energy.
Yeah.
I feel like God has walked in. The waters part. We got to part the Red Sea. But there's a lot of energy about it because it's important.
Yes.
But here's the question. We know it's important. We've said it's vital to our community. So how do we use this to create the buzzword generational wealth? And everyone just uses that word so loosely. But at the end of the day, how do we create generational wealth? Okay, in the Black community. How do we create real jobs? Because I'm going to take a little bit of time on this one. I'm old school. Born in Chicago, South Side, Operation Breadbasket with Jesse Jackson, Push, and all that stuff, to creating jobs, create economic power. And for me, it just never materialized.
Yeah.
In bits and pieces, but it just never materialized.
Yeah.
And so how is this center going? I see your energy here. So how is this center going to solve this problem? Because that is our number one goal. If we can get through that, it's game over.
You gotta let her answer.
Game over.
Yeah,
So number one, I would never put myself out there that we can solve that
No,
problem by
I know.
ourselves, but we're going to take a really good attempt of that. And by number one, by doing the studying, learning from research and data should drive it. And then secondly, in trying to delve a little bit in understanding. So yes, the rhetoric is entrepreneurship is that silver bullet right now that's going to close this racial inequality wealth gap that we have. What we fail to say and double click on that, it's not all entrepreneurship is equal. So that's the first thing. We have to now layer it and say what type of entrepreneurship is going to move that needle a little exponentially faster and perhaps push it closer. So when we start looking at the various type, historically, we've had businesses that were low-paying jobs, and for right reasons, because they were also easier with lower barriers to get into. What we know now is that technology company and tech-enabled companies move that needle a bit closer, right? So if we know the types of companies, then we have to start encouraging and planting the seeds for those particular type of companies, and not just all business, right? Let's just start from there.
That's
the
fair.
second piece is to weave it the recipe to start those businesses by engaging our students to show them they don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
So exposure.
Yep.
Everyone, I would say, not everyone, let me back off. The majority of our students will gravitate to number one because they're still learning and searching to things that are close to them, their hobbies. Yeah. So I'm good at taking pictures, so I want to be a photographer, right? That's
shout out Ryan Mathis.
Yeah. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you're a hobby entrepreneur, right? What we need to start doing is exposing you so you can start thinking about other avenues. Construction. I heard you mention franchise. We're working with Hartsfield-Jackson. So many of those jobs. Hartsfield-Jackson have $80 billion worth of contracts that's going to be executed in the next 5 years here in Atlanta.
Wow.
Are we part of that discussion? And what does
Part
that
of that
look like?
ecosystem.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's those types of discussion that we need to start talking about in how do we expose our students, open up minds, our people, our community to understand those types of opportunities so that we could go into high growth opportunity for entrepreneurs.
Well, that's interesting you said exposure, because when we brought Tarji Carter here to talk about franchise, she was our first podcast person, and now I've heard Ryan talk about franchise because he heard that conversation.
Yes.
So if we move the needle with one person, we've moved the needal. We're successful.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be 100, just one.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on the tech side. The less barriers to entry, capital intensive, that's generally going to be the way we can really move it. And technology has opened up that door to moving it very, very fast.
Or
very
in
fast.
what we have just, I'll work with businesses in the community, and we've touched over about 400 businesses since we've started this work, really help them raise up close to $50 million in capital, because we're about really focused in doing that, and help them create over $85.3 million in new revenues. So we're in industry focused. We're running one now in construction. And the idea is that, and what we know from research also, the economist Bill Bradford in the early 80s really wrote some phenomenal work that talks about there's three major things that help businesses grow. Number one, access to capital. We got that. Second was access to management education training, which is part of one of the questions that you asked, that knowledge piece, right? We have to know the finance. We have to know operation. We have to know these things. So putting together that curriculum and that teaching. And then the third piece, which often doesn't get a lot of discussion, is access to opportunity, access to contract. I don't care how much capital you raise. If you don't increase your revenue and have more customers, which is the way we started this discussion, you're still going to fail. Your business is going to fail. So when we design our programs, we're intentional about bringing capital to the table and opportunity to the table as we get it layered with all that knowledge.
Yeah, I hope you guys are learning something. Dr. Bussey, Professor.
It's like church in here.
Nail on the hammer. Oh my goodness. The amount of knowledge being dropped. If you learned something, hit the like button right now. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and share this video with one person. But Dr. Bussey, you just addressed so many things. But I want to ask you one more thing. Sure. As we kind of come to a close here, I want to ask you, so for someone who's looking to become an entrepreneur, I know obviously through your years of experience, you've probably seen a lot of failures, you've seen a lot of positives. What steps should someone take that would give them the best chance of succeeding in entrepreneurship? Whether that means finding your passion early, solving a problem like both of you guys mentioned. What steps would you say gives a student the best chance to succeeding in entrepreneurship?
Just go out there and start doing the darn thing, okay? The rest will follow. And I want to correct something that you said. You said something about doing well and then failing. failure is good. In
Failure
this
is
case,
great.
right?
Vital.
That's how you learn. If you are so afraid of keep writing that business plan or keeping that idea up here, that is not what this is about. You need to just get out there, do the darn thing, learn from it, come back, experience,
Dropping
come
gems.
back
Oh my
here,
goodness.
and reach
I hope
out to
y'all
the
listen.
community that can help you, right?
I'm about to say something. I'm probably going to start paying Nick Saban pretty soon. I love this statement. Never waste a failure.
Yes.
Never waste
There
one.
you go.
You know,
There
I
you
was going to
go.
say. I mean, let me ask this. I know we're getting close, but I'm having a little fun with this. Let me ask you this.
Yeah, this is fun. Have me
is
back
fun.
again. Please do
This is
invite me again.
Let me ask you this. When you think of entrepreneurs, I say entrepreneurship, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
What's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about entrepreneurship? I think about my students, really, because they're young, they're passionate, it's hopeful. That's what I get. I get hope from that. Yes.
When I say black entrepreneurship, what do you think?
Oh my goodness, about the people that I serve. You mean in terms of one individual or just
Whatever comes to your mind.
Oh, because I've been into this middle of this work, I see smiling faces. I see the folks that come to our programs. I see the folks that talk about it and tell me about, you know what, Tiffany, I really need this loan right now to keep the light on to make payroll next week. Right? And then we start leaning on our networks and making the phone calls and calling our partners at ACE, Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, and say, hey, can you help them? That's what I think about. I think about the jobs that they create, the opportunities that they could give back into our community. We can do this. I think one of the questions you asked about how do we make this all come together, it's that ecosystem that needs to be formed that's going to create this LinkedIn together. Morehouse, the alumni, the students, the businesses in there. When we start connecting and working together, we got to make that work.
You have to do it.
One last thing. Is it important? And I teach this in my class, and it has nothing to do with finance. Nothing to do with it. I always bring the Tulsa Black Wall Street to them.
Yes.
There's a Harvard Business School case
Yes.
out there. It was done by Steve Rogers. So I have to give him his due on that. And it's about 40 pages. And I haven't read it. And I haven't read it because you need to know. That's where it started.
Well-
You need to know. I mean, if church started anywhere, that's where church started. Now, here's the interesting part. I went through Morehouse. I didn't really hear about it. I didn't. And one of my best friends, George Britt, who was my roommate, brought it to my attention back in the 90s. I said, why didn't I hear about this? And all of a sudden now you hear about it. People are like, oh, this really happened. Oh, this really happened. Oh, guess what? It actually happened in Atlanta. Guess what? It actually happened in Chicago. It happened here and here. How important is it? And I know we have the Black Leadership class and that stuff. How important is it that we know this history?
Very important. One of the things that I mentioned, we did this work by looking at curriculums that were out there and being taught. We also believe that there's a missing piece to the curriculum on entrepreneurship that is not out there in general. And one of the things we want to correct here at Morehouse is to start with exactly that point, the history of Black entrepreneurship. We must understand that. That is one of the first freshman class that is now being offered. It's the cornerstone of our curriculum, and we have to start with that because you have to acknowledge it, and you have to know, because that touches on the policy piece and the systemic barriers piece. And if we know it, then we can start everything else from there. And nowhere else that I know of is really teaching that as the first step and the foundational piece. And I think that is what Morehouse needs to own.
For sure.
So I give them that case, and then my other, and I'll just say this since you're talking about it, the systemic barriers that are out there. I give them the Reginald Lewis book because that's my dude, and I say you need to read it.
That should be the Bible.
Yeah, you should read it. Not just because he was so successful, but what he had to go through. And this guy was highly intelligent, and he still had barriers to go through. So I appreciate that.
So, like I said, Dr. Bussey, I'm so thankful for all this time.
I'm excited.
Giving us this is one of the best.
Start a business now.
If literally I'm ready to start one right now myself. But so I know you talked about the MIEC. Can you tell people where they can find it or access it?
Sure. Of course, from the General Morehouse website, but we do have a auxiliary website because of so much information, and that's the MIEC Center, MIECcenter.com. and we'll make sure that we definitely
I'll
get
put
you
that in the
guys. And
description.
follow us on LinkedIn and Insta.
Do you want to say anything about the minor? While you have an opportunity here.
Wow! Yes. So
we can keep the we can keep the podcast going, so they won't cut us off.
For all students, I mean, this was certainly, I talked about that journey and that entrepreneurial journey of getting this minor started. We have something very powerful and special here at Morehouse. The minor consists of 5 classes, 5 fundamental classes with 1 elective. I think that if it is my wish, every student will graduate with this minor, right? But we structured it where if you follow through, we start with the history. We actually then get into the mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, and understanding it. This thing is psychology also, not just the know-how and how to run a business. And then we go into understanding the dynamics of innovation thinking and the innovation framework, innovation design, how to find a problem, how to bring solutions. That piece is important. Then we have the financial management class, understanding the numbers, and then we have the marketing, digital marketing. You guys are doing something here. You don't need a brick and mortar. You set this up right here, right? So understanding the digital marketing piece, and then we finish with a capstone where they're actually launching a business. I think it's a fantastic program, and the important piece is that students declare it as a minor, and again, it's brought to us by the support of the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, which is a collaboration between Morehouse and Spelman.
That's awesome. Dr. Bussey, if you don't mind, is there any way people can get in contact with you?
Email? Definitely. My email is the first name, that last name, Tiffany, Tiffany, .Bussey, Bussey, at morehouse.edu. I'm also on LinkedIn, so
Okay,
definitely
As
connect.
you know, I'll leave that all in the description. Before we leave, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Ryan Mathis behind the camera.
Absolutely.
None of this is possible without the GOAT himself, Mr. Ryan Mathis.
Oh, that's right. We only invite goats on here, greatest of all times. So
With
goat status. You have to. I ain't throwing up no signs. We don't throw up signs, but we only deal with It's all just but we only deal with goats. So there you go.
Thank you guys. This
Dr.
has been
Bussey,
awesome.
thank you guys.
Had a lot of fun, and so please do have me back.
I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you all in the next one. Peace.